All right, guys, jumping right in. We started 2017 off in San Felipe, Mexico, in the midst of a fuel crisis. And I'm going to try to go through these, or we are going to try to go through these in somewhat of a chronological order. But Mexico was in the midst of changing their fuel system, and the prices were in fluctuation.
Just a little bit of a crazy time.
But at the same time, San Felipe has become one of our favorite destinations for RVing, at least.
Absolutely. It's such a relaxing place to go. It's crazy to think that it's already been a year since then, because it seems like it was just yesterday that we were there.
We've been back a couple times, several times actually.
Yeah.
So highly recommend San Felipe, Mexico. It's just so close to the border, and it gets bloody hot in the summer, so try to hit that one in the winter.
Yeah.
But it is totally worth it, guys.
If you're looking for a great place to just decompress, relax, get your mind set into a slower groove, it's the place to go.
So the next place that we really liked is called Senator Wash, outside of Yuma. And surprisingly, we spent a good chunk of the winter of 2017 in that little corner there. And Senator Wash is a reservoir, and on the back side, was at the North Shore, I believe.
Boy,
it was the back side of the lake. There are some amazing campsites there, guys.
Epic campsites.
Yeah, it was really hot at that time. It was pushing 100, and we were able to take dips in the lake and cool off like every hour. And the fishing could have been better. There are carp jumping everywhere, but the carp wouldn't, want anything to do with like my bread or kind of dough baits.
We spent my birthday there too.
Yeah. Yep. We did our full 14-day stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that says a lot right there.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that we didn't get bored. But it was wonderful because we could run our generator and not really bother anybody. And we had the generator that would run the AC if we got too warm. And we had all the amenities of the long-term vehicle area, which was water, dump, and trash. Yep. You just had to get over there. So we used the ATV, and well, there's all the videos. Yep. All right. The
next
lake was
up,
the best part, though.
Wow, Eastern Sierra. I guess I have to do this one. Beck had to head up to Alaska, and I went up the 395 on the Eastern Sierra of California, and it is so much fun. You get above Bishop and you just gain elevation. You're at 7,000 to 9,000 feet at any point up there. It's just so spectacular. The hot springs, it's ATV friendly. There's tons of free camping. If you have a vehicle that can handle some dirt roads a little bit better, tons of free stuff there. The fishing left a lot to be desired. I really got skunked there.
Well, you kind of thought maybe it was too early in the year.
They weren't stocking. Right? Those lakes are so dependent on stocking programs. There's nothing natural happening. I still remember
that drone shot you took from there. You were in like a heart-shaped hot spring, and you sent me a picture saying you were missing the other half of your heart or something.
Yeah, and you were in Alaska. It's also a little torturous. So highly recommend taking a trip up the 395. And then down below that, actually, towards Lone Pine, there's the Alabama Hills and Independence, and I met up with Eric and Danielle from Shore Looks Nice there. And
you guys had some epic bike rides. And
we had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So totally recommend Highway 395 in California.
So he makes it sound like it was all fun and games for him, and I was up freezing to death in Alaska. But actually, I had to be in Alaska for 2 weeks, and I had a week off in between. And so I planned a girls' trip. Well, actually, my mom planned it. But my mom and I planned a girls' trip, and we did an Alaska Inside Passage cruise with Holland America. And let's just say I wasn't for want of anything. It was awesome. We had one of those spa suites where it was a thermal suite. You could go into this great little jacuzzi pool, then you could sit on these warm stone beds. We visited all of the different little towns that we hadn't been to before, like Juneau and Skagway.
The Inside Passage is very isolated.
It is. But I had always wanted to do that train ride. I got to do that. Spent some time in Juneau instead of just landing in an airplane there, which is all I'd ever done before. Got to see Ketchikan. and totem poles, which we really don't have totem poles up on the mainland Alaska.
Yeah,
that's a very
tribes.
southeastern thing where the Tlingit tribes are. And so that was very special to me. I loved that. So I wasn't hurting too bad.
No.
And I got to see some snow, which you didn't.
Oh, I got snowed on in the Eastern Sierra.
Not Alaska snow, though.
No, it's California snow. All right, so forgive the whole glancing down at the notes screen on our phone, but up next...
Yeah, we can't remember everything from 2017 without some notes.
Let's lump this together. But the California deserts and the Colorado River area, just as a whole, I touched on this a little bit when I was talking about the Yuma area, but that whole Colorado River and desert area in the winter is so much fun. There's free camping, there's off-roading, there's wildflowers, there's so much stuff.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time,
a huge portion of last winter in that
and even a good portion of the winter before.
I was gonna say, it wasn't just 2017, it was the year before too. We've always, because it's inexpensive camping, you have a lot of liberties, it's kind of our whole, we like to be a little bit free to do our thing, not so locked into the rules
and restricted.
It's a great area for us. We've always enjoyed it a lot. And it doesn't matter, I mean, like, every area you go to is a little bit different in terms of what it looks like and the things you can do. You know, there's so many things along the Colorado River. But
Colorado River is hundreds upon hundreds of miles all the way through California on up, you know, to where it starts by the Green River and whatnot.
One place that we especially loved and really took us both by surprise was the Enchanted Circle area of New Mexico.
Like the northeast section there.
Kind of up in the hills and mountains above Taos. I expected something really different from Taos.
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother video.
It is.
The city of Taos is not what I had in mind when I heard about Taos.
But then you drive out of Taos and up into the mountains to the east, and you end up in this Eagle's Nest, right?
Yeah, Eagle Nest Lake, I think.
It was amazing. One of my favorite places from the year.
Yeah.
And
campsites were nice on that lake.
We spent a good bit of time there before we drove on into Kansas for harvest.
We set up there for a couple days at least and just decompressed and did our thing and kayaked.
We went kayaking. I got the big microphone.
The vest has to be fully fastened and mandatory wear at all times on the water.
You got in trouble.
Oh, shut up. It would have been you if you'd come out here first.
Yeah, that was good. So yeah, we'll touch about harvest later on, but Montana, on our way home, we pretty much shot up the 15, and that drive through Montana is spectacular. Another area that warrants further exploration for us. And we found a really cool town up by the Canadian border. I can't even really remember the name of it, but I'll put it in the video. But we stayed at this dirt cheap campground with hookups or just electricity.
No, it was electricity.
Yeah, but it was a cool city
they had water
campground.
On site.
Yeah, it was just awesome to kind of hit the reset button before we crossed into Canada, which then means a couple thousand miles or so journey back to Alaska.
It was a great place to recuperate, but also just in and of itself, I mean, I could have never left there. It was amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot more to explore. So now it's time to touch on Alaska.
Yeah.
You know, we did actually go home for a little bit this year.
Tiny bit.
We were home for about
4 months.
Yeah, 4 months or so again. Kind of missed out on a lot of fishing. Could have done better, but we did go salmon and halibut fishing.
Yeah.
Had some great experiences. We were able to do our caribou hunting trip in the fall.
Yep.
And got to go grouse hunting and do a lot of our favorite Alaskan activities.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about that part of Alaska. We may come home exhausted from hunting, but you come home spiritually rejuvenated from spending time in that part of Alaska, especially in the autumn, and especially the way we camp, where it's much more remote than most of the camping we ever do. And
it's getting dark, so the northern lights are out. It's a season of change.
Place. Yeah. We look forward to it every year, going up there. Always.
Exactly. So Alaska is still our home, guys. and I think it's always going to be our home base.
Yeah.
It's an amazing state to have residency. We just have so much established there. Alaska is our home, and we are going to be keeping our home for, the foreseeable future. We opted to kind of work harder so we can keep the home, because we love Alaska that much.
And it's nice to know that you have a place you could go home to, especially our home. It's such a place where we go home and feels like the world is at bay there.
Yeah. Then 2 weeks later, we're getting antsy. Like, all right, we got to go do something.
But at least the world's at bay when we need it to be.
Exactly. So moving on to favorite experiences of 2017.
What did you put on this list?
Our first one, you planned it. It was a romantic couples weekend.
To Tijuana.
Yeah, it worked. It was awesome.
For Ben, I knew he would. It was kind of a joke because he had planned a romantic weekend to Barrow in 2015. So our romantic weekends don't have to necessarily be to romantic places, but it was an awesome
traditional.
trip. No, they don't.
We strive for untraditional.
If you hadn't figured that out yet. But it was fun, and I think one of the big highlights of that was going down to Villa Guadalupe. I would love to spend more time there.
Wine tasting in Mexico, only about an hour or so south of the border, guys. So much fun.
They're calling it the Napa Valley of Mexico, and they're really building it out down there. I mean, it's still in the baby stages, but you have like a Michelin star chef down there.
Yep.
And we bumped pretty bad.
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay.
It's real life.
Yeah. But you have a Michelin star chef down there, which that was an amazing meal.
Yeah, that meal.
That was incredible.
Deckman's?
Yeah. We had bone marrow there and all kinds of amazing.
We have to look at the footage, but it was the most amazing outdoor 5-star eating experience that you will ever have. I guess there's a pattern here, but favorite experiences, the petting baby whales in Guerrero Negro in Scammons Lagoon on Baja California, Mexico.
Now that wasn't just a favorite of 2017 though. That was like a top 5 for life.
Oh, hands down.
Oh my gosh. That was... You have no idea what to expect when you're going out there. And truthfully, in my mind, I'm going like, oh my God, I hope one of those whales don't breach and hit our boat.
No, instead they're scratching their back on the keel of this ponga.
Yeah, tiny ponga.
Mama's twice the size of the ponga.
Yeah. But once they show up and you start petting them and they're, around your boat, you stop worrying about it.
Yeah.
It's such an
incredible socializing behavior for these whales. And like the whales just come up and you'll see the eyes blink. It just goes right to your soul.
It does. It does. And I think it's especially precious to us because those very same whales come home to Alaska where we live.
Yeah.
And the gray whales are there in the early spring.
So they swim right by our house every year.
It's so cool. You have to go if you haven't done it.
Favorite experiences, you touched on this a little bit, but those hot springs outside of Mammoth Lakes on the California 395. It's Mono Hot Springs, Wild Willie's Hot Springs. They got a lot of names for them, but they're all free. They're pretty much all wild. There may be like a boardwalk. At most, there's one funky one. It's kind of like this tub and just the hot water, but it's only big enough for like 1 or maybe 2 people. It's a little weird looking, but hey, it's cool.
With as much as Ben has talked about the 395, and I know how much it takes him to actually be impressed by an area, I am looking forward to going back with him. And pretty much right after 395, we started for Kansas. So we went home for harvest and stopped in a few places along the way. It was a good trip on the way out. But
we're on a mission.
Yeah, we were. Ben had never been home for harvest, and
as an adult, you have never really been home for harvest.
I had not been home for harvest since I was 13, so a long time. And stop it. And in my family, harvest is a big deal. It's a kind of a rite of passage, I guess you might
farming
say.
culture. It's like commercial fishing, you know, and the salmon run. It's the same sense of community.
And for my family, my dad is the last generation who will farm because all of the grandkids have gone off and done other things, and my grandfather has passed away now, and this is it. So
it's actually a dying lifestyle.
It is.
Great American farmer. It's something to be cherished.
Yeah.
The heartland of America.
The bread basket. That's what I loved about what we did, what you did, and why I cry every time we watch that video, and I'll tear up now thinking about it, is that we documented that. And I think that's critical, not just for our family, but for everybody, because it is going away. It's almost gone. And it's definitely never going to be the way it was with my grandpa and my dad when he farmed in the early days.
Yep.
So
it's
really special. Not just fun, but special.
So the next experience, I can't necessarily call this a favorite experience. It was a very experiencing experience, but I had a colonoscopy this year and had a camera shoved up, though, you know where, and I vlogged it. It was an amazing public service announcement with a little spice of some humor and enough real life and honesty. I have gas.
Oh, God. You are so toasted right now. Brutal honesty.
You know, I caught a lot of heat for that video, but if that video saves one life and makes somebody go in for a colonoscopy and early detection, it is all worthwhile. And I know us guys can be stubborn, so that's another reason why I made that video. So if you haven't and you're due, go get that camera shoved up your butt. It might save your life.
This next thing kind of came as a result of the things that happened this fall, which you guys all know pretty well. From about August on, the rest of 2017 was pretty rough on us.
Kind of crappy.
It has been a roller coaster.
Definitely.
But we try to look for the good things that came out of it, and in terms of experience, there's a lot we learned, and we'll talk about that later. But in terms of experience, the fact that we were in California and could participate in the Live the Adventure Summit in Kernville was definitely something that was positive that came out of being down in California for the fall, maybe for not such happy reasons. And a lot happened there, you know, just being able to meet other people, other creators who do what we do, learning from one another, sharing and collaborating in videos, and I mean, you know, the highlight of meeting two guys who just circumnavigated the earth. Not very many people have done that. Yeah, in a small plane. Yes.
Yeah, but we made some really good connections. You know, JP, the pilot of that trip, from Africa, and Africa is very similar to the frontier-ish of Alaska, so we really did mesh. We had a lot of stories to share, and
there was one point when I shared the story about the Coast Guard when I flew with the Coast Guard in Alaska, and then I couldn't get home because of an avalanche, and he's like, all right, now you're just... He thought we were making it up.
You can't make stuff like that up. So,
that was fun.
So the last amazing experience of 2017 was the rocket launch last week at Vandenberg Air Force Base. There was a SpaceX launch. The power behind a rocket, just like the cracking, because like is so loud. I don't know. It was amazing. If you ever have an opportunity to watch a rocket launch, either on the Space Coast or some other base in your travels, jump on it. That is just the power. If you love horsepower and
feeling
firepower,
the heat. And then I still remember when you went
louder. So there were also a lot of really cool experiences on the ATV, and forgive me, I'm going to look down at my notes, but we have explored the Yuma area, in that desert area, thoroughly on the ATV. From the canals, we went exploring with Russ, which was kind of right by Senator Wash as well.
Yeah.
We cruise around the streets of Quartzsite. Like, we get everywhere on this little
Necessity
ATV.
breeds ingenuity, we'll say
Yep.
that.
And the free camping at Akatia Wells during wildflower season.
Yeah.
But then we also took the ATV down to Mexico, and we
That
went
was a
to
first.
Bahia de Los Angeles and went out. I don't know the name of it, but it was this
That
gorgeous beach that we couldn't camp at because we have a 2-wheel drive motorhome.
Yeah. Next time we'll have something we
Yeah.
can camp in there.
And then we also got to explore that fish market in Popotla.
Oh, when we drove the ATV down onto the beach,
We had no idea what was down there. It's like, there's people down there. Can we go?
it was fantastic. Like, there were families down there. It was a Sunday afternoon, if
yeah.
I remember correctly. It was like a
Locals,
local hangout.
totally.
And kids playing in the water, and it was fantastic.
Well, and then the Eastern Sierra, scooted all around that place. The Alabama Hills outside of Lone Pine or Independence.
Boy, you'd
one
have
of
to look
them.
at a map.
Used it in Kansas, around
That
the
was
farm.
fun. We drove out to the lake at Stafford.
Yeah, a
on
little
it.
lake.
That was fun.
And then obviously there's ATV ventures in Alaska while we were out hunting.
Yeah.
Got stuck. I need to make a
Of
video
course.
about that recovery.
That was
'Cause
awesome.
I need to share our technique.
That Dan
Yep.
Thinker was pretty. That was the first time we'd ever actually gotten to use it, other than to test it and see if it worked.
And then the last time I think we used the side-by-side was at Deep Creek, one of our favorite beach camping locations in Alaska.
I love that place.
Oh, that is so awesome there. And then, you can talk about the kayak. We did a fair amount of kayaking, not as much as we could have, should have,
Not as much as we probably wanted to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
things
but,
are what they are.
I mean, obviously, we used it a lot in Senator Wash.
In the whole Yuma area. We used it up in the Sierra.
Yeah, you went out when it was kind of snowing and cold.
Yeah,
and
I
that
went
thing.
kayak fishing, not kayak catching.
Well, that's all
Yeah.
right.
And then we also got to go on Johnson Lake, our very last campsite, and the lake started freezing over on us, and I used the kayak as an icebreaker.
That was so cool.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So now it's on to people.
people. Well, I guess we should start with San Felipe
Exactly.
again, because
I
it's the
got it.
beginning of the year. So
I'm
that
dialed
would
in on
be-
my list here, honey.
You are? Okay. Is it even in order?
It's Tom and
Ooh,
Anita.
Yeah, it
I
is.
think
Yep,
so.
yep. The guy who
Tied me up
tied
in
you
zip
up with
ties.
zip ties.
Tom and Anita have become great friends.
Yeah, and then we ended up bumping into them in San Felipe again
Yeah.
in Thanksgiving time. So
And yeah, it's the type of friendship that's just gonna, be there forever, and we're just gonna see each other in all these random places.
well, it's fun to spend time with people who have similar mindsets, kindred spirits, so to speak, and they very much are, I think.
And then we got to meet Ed,
Yes.
one of our viewers, you
One of
guys.
you guys.
Yeah, he's like goes out to Glamis all the time, and he's like, well, let's meet up, and the dates worked, and he has this beautiful Sandcar too with a Corvette engine, and
That was
we
so
had
much
so
fun.
much fun with you, Ed.
We did.
Thank you. I'm
Yep.
so glad we were able to make that happen, and hopefully we can meet up in Glamis again. See here, then we got to meet up with Steve in Ocean Beach. He lives in San
when
Diego.
we had a meetup down there.
Yeah, Hoodads or Hodads, that
It was a
big monstrous hamburger.
Yep, burger place. And I love Ocean Beach. That's such a neat place.
The hippie vibe.
It's kind
and-
of like the Venice Beach of San Diego.
Yeah, it is. A
Totally
little
is.
on the dirty side, a lot of creative, free-thinking people,
Yeah.
but it's OB, and you have to just respect it for what it is.
Yeah. It has its unique special qualities.
Yeah. And so the next people we got to meet, you didn't get to hang out with them as much as I did because it was on the 395 trip, but Eric and Danielle
Yeah.
from Shore Looks Nice. And Eric and I really hit it off. What was a lot of fun and what I really enjoyed was he has the same energy and passion for going out and capturing amazing footage and just going out with the cameras. And so few of the people, I don't think anybody in our travels that
Matched you.
that had, match
Yeah.
or have a similar interest and passion for catching awesome shots. You guys know I take a lot of pride in capturing awesomeness.
Spend a lot of time.
And to have a friend to hang out with and camp with that has that same energy and desire to go out and just play with cameras and see what happens. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I really hope Eric and Danielle are in our future for crossing paths again. So moving on to Tijuana Travels. We first met in Quartzsite, but everything was kind of busy there.
Oh, there's so many people.
Yeah.
And
Gary and Stacy?
Yeah.
We loved meeting you guys and are honored to have you guys as friends.
Yes. And we had a lot of fun in Alaska when they driveway surfed with us for
it was a difficult time in our lives because right before we had to put Remy down, and I can't even talk about it.
But the thing is when you meet people that you bond with like that, it doesn't matter what time in your life you meet them, because there's the underlying similarities that cause you to bond in the first place.
Yep. Great friends. Love you guys.
Yep. I hope we bump into them soon.
Oh, we will. In Alaska, we also got to hang out with Swelly, Jim. And we always love hanging out with Swelly. He owns Swell Time, the boat I used to run fishing charters on, and now we just take out fishing recreationally.
Swelly is one of my favorite people in the world. He has such a wonderful spirit about him, and I love going back and watching the videos with him in them, because he always has some ridiculous dorky saying.
We call him Jim-isms.
And remember, folks, it's not the size of your bait, it's how you present it.
Jim is on fire today, number 3.
And then,
where the hell do you come up with this stuff?
And Jim was able to join us on the hunting trip.
Yes.
You know, we weren't able to harvest an animal while he was there, but
you guys still had a great time, and
it was a lot of fun. So also on the hunting trip, I was able to hook up with Bixler.
Yeah.
Bix and Kristen.
I hung out with Kristen.
Well, yeah, I guess she wasn't feeling well and she didn't want to be alone with the baby, so she came over to our motorhome just for safety's sake, because you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
But yeah, Bix and they're all like our doppelgangers
in
many respects. We'll get into that when we get them on film some other time. Fabian and Isabella.
Oh, yeah. We kind of pushed ourselves outside of our comfort zone by reaching out to Fabian and Isabella. We saw their expedition vehicle parked in Seward this summer, and
they had a little sticker on there saying who they were.
And every time we saw an expedition vehicle in Seward this summer, we went looking at it, and we reached out to the people. And
there's a lot of expedition vehicles that come to Alaska for obvious reasons.
Yes. And we kind of talked and agreed, why don't you guys just come over to our house and we'll have a bonfire and cook some food and hang out and visit.
For me, aside from making new friends and very rewarding, is that they are aspiring YouTubers, or were. They're actually established YouTubers now.
Very much so.
Like they invited us to do a tour of their expedition vehicle, which was an amazing
and we drove out to
tour.
Low Point.
And they had 300-ish on subscribers. And now they're probably pushing somewhere around 8,000 to 9,000 subscribers. So they're Live and Give 4x4. And it just warms my heart that we were able to pay it forward, like we mentioned earlier, and give them the jump start. Because now they have this amazing... Yeah, that's all it is. Getting discovered.
Yeah. Who else do you
Jax.
got? Oh, yeah. Jax was awesome. I still love that... patio on his roof that he has.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a patio.
So yeah, like I said, this is Milan. It's French or whatever for my lawn.
We met Jax at the Live the Adventure Summit in Kernville in November, and he's a YouTuber and traveler, and
he has a great spirit about him.
Good energy.
He does. He's take life by the horns and don't let go kind of guy.
Yep. So we're talking about friends. Now we have to talk about family.
Yeah.
Our traveling lifestyle, and I guess our remote life in Alaska prior to, it never lent itself to a ton of family time, because we were 5,000 miles away from Southern California.
Here and there, and occasional holidays.
So the full-time RV travel life really lent itself well to getting to meet up with family. And your mom met up with us a lot.
She did, yep.
My dad joined us on our Thanksgiving trip, and we saw Dad tons of other various times.
Yep.
My mom and Dad are hard to catch on camera, but we got great time with your dad. And we had all of wheat harvest on this road trip. There now also family talk. I'm just going to touch on this real quick, but we said goodbye to our beloved dog Remy this fall. It's still hard. And then with the events of Shelby's health this fall, we're very lucky to spend so much time with our dogs and have them be a very
by our sides all the
crucial
time.
Part of our lives, because we are together so much. And, you know, Remy's forever in our hearts.
Yeah.
Okay, excuse the camera glitch. On to project updates. In the fall of 2017, we started a new channel called His and Hers Moments. It's just the nitty-gritty moment, 1 to 2 minutes for the most part, moments that we've had in our travels, just because the camera has been running.
Well, and they get lost in the vlogs.
Yeah, a lot of stuff gets lost in a vlog. Not many people are willing to click on a 15-minute vlog to see one little portion of it, so that's why we just kind of crunched it down.
Not we either. I think we need to make a point that, like, this was your brainchild.
But it's coming to the realizations of what the viewers want. You know, a lot of people are willing to click on a 30-second video or a 1 minute or 2 minute video, but just the long stuff, like I said, just gets lost. But we had a video that went viral for a while. It was an interesting one. It's grocery shopping in Barrow, a super ridiculous expensive grocery store.
$37 watermelon for half of the watermelon.
Right now it's sitting somewhere around 450,000 views, but it was hitting like 200,000 views a day there at one point. But it ended up getting stolen by this person called Nessa. I've never heard of her before. I guess she's like MTV or maybe a radio show or something, but the people that manage her social media accounts, because I really doubt it's her, you know, if you're that big of a celebrity. I don't even know if she is a big celebrity, I don't know, but it got like 6 million plus views on her Facebook page, not YouTube, Facebook. So
yeah, they ripped the footage.
Yeah, they downloaded, because there's all kinds of software where you can download YouTube videos, and then they even trimmed it, so you didn't even, there was like no context to it. It's just prices of a grocery store in Alaska. It didn't say Barrow. You know, they hacked it up, but fortunately we had the watermark, and
it's a reminder to us to be uber conscientious about putting that on all of our work.
Exactly, because so many people can steal your work, but at least she wasn't making money off us. But the fact that she stole it was not right. But the Moments channel as a whole is going great.
It is.
Now the expedition vehicle. I know a lot of people
are wondering
where are we at with this expedition vehicle process.
Well, Martin is the one who really blew your mind when we sat down and talked to him. He made excellent points about features and quality of product that you want to have in an expedition vehicle, and basically in one evening changed the chassis that we would purchase and doubled our budget.
Yeah, you know, the ETL Overland vehicle is amazing for probably 90% of the people who'd want an expedition vehicle. But we want our expedition vehicle to leave Alaska whenever we want. So that can be in January when it's -50 and drive thousands of miles through that climate just so we can go hang out in Mexico whenever we like. And the aluminum body and that, the airways and all that, it's just not insulated well enough. So we need to get composite. Then you're looking at
a lot more money.
Like the budget went from thinking maybe something like around 150 to his vehicle was just under 4. So that's...
But the thing that I appreciate the most, aside from the fact that he doubled our budget, he convinced us that the military chassis
is not a bad one.
Really, actually, like, it hit home so hard for me of how it's actually the best thing because
the LMTV.
they're made, like they do 20-year rust tests on these things. Like they set them in salt water for 20 years and see how much they rust. That's the kind of chassis that you get. And it's also built to bust through barricades. So if you have
and
a car
run on the worst fuels possible, and run
and
with half
like
the
get dropped
oil.
out of airplanes,
Yeah.
and crazy stuff. So
Caterpillar engine, Allison transmission still, so all that good
There's almost
stuff.
nothing that we could find on Earth that this thing wouldn't be built well for.
I think we would just need to re-gear the rear differential, because I think they max out like a cruising speeds around 55. If you re-gear the rear diff, you can get up to like 65, maybe even 68, they say. And if we look, maybe time is money. You know, if you're able to cover more ground and it's worth re-gearing the rear end, I don't know. But we're not ready to spend almost $400,000 on an expedition vehicle.
I also think the other thing that we realized is that we're looking only in America. Very few people in America purchase expedition vehicles.
Compared to
Lots
Europe.
of people purchase them in Europe. And so there are a lot more options
Used
in Europe.
options.
Used and new, but just a lot more. There's really three major players in the United States for building EVs. There are lots of them in Europe. And I am adamant that we need to go spend some time in Europe and look around at the manufacturers over there and the options over there and see what we can get in another country before we choose something here and spend so much money. Make sure we're getting what we really want and what's really possible.
The hang up that I'm at is I'm okay with us spending 30, maybe 50 on the vehicle that's not perfect. But if we're going to pony up to like a $400,000 number, that vehicle better damn well be perfect and hit every point that we want it to hit.
Rocket fuel should come out its backside.
Exactly. That thing should take us to space for $400,000.
I think that the space shuttles cost a lot more than $400,000.
Hey, you know, I'm just saying for $400,000 it needs to be perfect. But
Perfect
if we
for
buy
us.
a used one in Europe for 30 to 50, and it doesn't
Which is
have
totally
to be perfect, because we'll just sell it, and then when we are ready to pony up to a $400,000,
we have them build exactly what we want.
and kind of like what's going on with this is we're learning by traveling in this RV, so we're going to learn more.
Yeah. And maybe it's smart for us to buy a used expedition vehicle, travel in it for a while, and figure out, because we're making all of these assumptions about what we want based on our motorhome experience, when an expedition vehicle experience is going to be very different.
Exactly. So 2017 was also an amazing year for the YouTube channel.
You know, I think it really hit home for me when you told me how many views we had in 2018.
Oh, I'm out of service. No service here, but I know enough for the numbers.
Yeah, we have a rough idea. When you told me, not 2018, when you told me how many views we had gotten in 2017 versus the entire life of the YouTube channel before 2017 was insane.
Right now, we're sitting at about 4 million views on our channel, and 3.4, give or take, million of those views came in 2017. And I'm going to take a guess that probably 3 million of those views came after May, when I made some realizations. And it's on my list, guys, but I'm going to be putting out a video of what I realized and how I needed to change myself but still stay true to myself to get this kind of channel growth. Because literally we're at 21,000 subscribers, and I think maybe we gained about 15,000, give or take, subscribers in 2017. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's tremendous growth. That means I was doing it all wrong for the first 2 years.
The other thing is that the vast majority of that came after June. Like June, July is when things really ramped up, and the number of subscribers and the viewership.
I changed the approach that I take to making videos. But it's a whole nother topic, and this
is.
video is getting very long.
Yep.
But welcome, guys. We're so glad that you have found us.
Yeah.
And we're glad to be here for
and we're
you.
really excited to share next year with you.
Now.
Well, this year.
Yeah, it's this year. So 2018. It's going to be big. It's going to be full of changes. A lot of transitions.
A lot of them have already happened.
Yeah.
In preparation for this.
Exactly.
I really, the last half of December, I really felt like a grown-up with all the things we put in place.
Yeah. Well, you didn't lose your job. No, you had the option of moving to Anchorage
to keep
it, but I'm sorry, we don't want to live in one place, and we don't want to live in Anchorage.
And I didn't want to work in an office after not working in an office for the last 6 years.
So you don't have a job anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to thank you, because you retaining this job has helped us build our relationship with you guys, and has gotten us to the point where we're now able to be a little more independent, and our businesses are standing on their own two legs, and this YouTube channel and our relationship with you guys is so strong.
Yep. And that required a lot of really intricate little pieces to the puzzle to all fall into place, and they have. In the last 3 or so months of 2017, everything, man, when that first came down, I mean, we knew it'd all be okay because we just knew it would, but everything had to fit into place to make this all happen, and it finally did. It really did.
And a good thing about you now being a part-time contractor instead of a full-time distance employee is we're not bound by international borders anymore. You got a little, we were able to take some trips into Mexico and take some vacation
luckily
time.
I had a lot of vacation time. I'd been there a long time, so I'd get like 6 or 8 weeks a year.
But 2018, the word of the year is international.
Si, senor. Oh, wait. Oui, monsieur.
Oh, it's going to be all kinds of languages. So getting back to like that whole expedition vehicle thing, we decided, why do we wait?
No, we don't.
Don't wait. That's one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people make, is they wait.
We're not waiting.
The RVing full-time around America, that's because we didn't want to wait to go travel. So we used what our means were and what our limitations were, and we made the most of it. Now 2018, we just need internet connection every now and then so we can hit you guys with these videos and check emails, but you're not bound to like the whole 9 to 5 phone call availability stuff. It's all changing, guys, and it is changing for the better. And we did it as a team. We've worked
a long time to get each step. We had worked a long time to get to each point we've gotten to in the past.
Yeah.
But this one is a really big step.
It is.
To be able to take off into the great blue yonder, and the world really is ours. We can dictate where we go, when we go,
We've got our little girl Shelby that we need to obviously take into consideration as to where we go, but she can fit underneath the seat of an airplane, and she can get a little doggy passport. So I think this video has already been way too long, and probably might even need to get split up amongst editing.
Yeah.
So I'm not dropping an hour-long video, but we'll see.
So last thing is, what did you learn? What's the big take-home lesson you learned in 2017? There's been lots of them.
Stay true to yourself and do things your way, but find out what works and still do it your way. Like, the video, that was my big epiphany, is that I had to realize what the viewers wanted and what the viewers needed, but still not sell out. Hey.
Really?
But sell out, So I had to just, learn how to do things my way, but the way that, you know, YouTube and Google and the SEO stuff needed for us to be discovered.
Okay. My big thing always in life is that I've known what my calling is. I know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, and in 2017 I had this very unfamiliar sense of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do or where I'm supposed to go or any of that. But this fall, it finally kind of fell into place for me that maybe it doesn't matter if I know, but the universe at large has put us exactly where we're supposed to be every second of every moment of every day.
You've heard us mention that we're here in California via forces far beyond our control, and we were where we needed to be with spending time with Grandpa and being here for family. And
but it also gives you the courage to know, like, because this is we're leaping off of a cliff here in 2018. This is a huge jump for us, and I have tremendous comfort in knowing that whatever choice we make is the right choice because it's the one we made, and that we are exactly where we're supposed to be and we're making the right decisions.
Yep.
Because the universe has us there for a reason.
Exactly. All right, guys. Thanks for spending 2017 with us. All of these things that we've spoken about can be found on our YouTube channel. I don't know how many videos there were, but there's definitely somewhere probably 200 to 250 at least for
well, especially with
year.
your daily vlogging in the beginning of the year.
Exactly. So thanks for riding along with us, and we're looking forward to sharing 2018 with you.
Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And
or wake up, because this video is so damn long.
And we'll see you in the new year.
Bye.